Hey, everybody, welcome to Saturday's episode of Weekend Waypoints. This is your Saturday morning cup of Joe presented by Plains Coffee Company. That's right. Yesterday I mentioned got some new sponsors coming on board, and Plains Coffee Company is the first of those sponsors. So before we get going on the baseball side of things, I have a series of pieces of good news about Plains Coffee Company. One, I think if you're like me, you like to support family owned local businesses. It's a husband and wife team at Plains Coffee Company roasting coffee beans. So you love that. Secondly, they're as fresh as you can get ordering beans on the internet. The beans are not roasted until you order them. So they are roasted the day before they are shipped. So they are as fresh as possible once they get to your door. That beats the heck out of what you get from a grocery store, which has been sitting there for God knows how long. Also, free shipping on any order in the US. You like that? Obviously, that makes it a little bit easier. I know if you're like me, when you buy things online, you feel good about how much you're spending, and then you go to the cart and then you see how much shipping is, and suddenly you start to get a little bit of cold feet. At Plains Coffee Company, that will not happen because shipping is free in the United States. You love that. And then I've got a coupon code for you. Use the code BASEBALL to get 10% off of your order at Plains Coffee Company. For more information, go to plainscoffee.com. They also have tea. That's another bit of good news there. If you're not into coffee, well, most of us are, I assume, into coffee. But if you're not a coffee person, or if you're a coffee and tea person, they also have tea over at Plains Coffee Company. So as I mentioned yesterday, support the people who support us. If you're a coffee drinker, give them a try. It's fresh beans. It's a reasonable price. It's free shipping. You've got 10% off using the code BASEBALL. So there's really, there's really a lot going for you. There's no reason not to, right? I meant to put a little banner down here. This will be a good reminder for you. Just excuse my silence here for just a second. This is live video here. There we go. So use code baseball at plainscoffee.com for 10% off of your order. All right, let's talk some baseball. Surprisingly drama-filled Friday in the SEC. We talked a lot about how, this was a light week. This was, didn't know what to expect in terms of, how much competitive baseball we were going to see. The weather obviously also made it a weird day. You had games going early. You had some games pushed to Saturday double headers. But we ended up with a incredibly drama-filled day in the SEC. Let me pull up. I'll share a screen. We'll look at the scoreboard here together. There we go. So you've got the SEC scores here. I mean, it started early. Auburn, that game against Austin Peay. More on that in a minute. You get a walk-off home run there. Kennesaw State jumped on Kentucky. So that was kind of interesting. That was kind of in that 4:00 Eastern window of games. Georgia put away Northern Colorado pretty easily. Missouri, another tough loss. Purdue, Fort Wayne. They're now 1-3 against teams from the Horizon League after they lost a series to Northern Kentucky last weekend. That's not what you're looking for there, but and things kind of kept going in an interesting way. The Florida St. Mary's game, we'll talk about that. I was impressed with the wins for Tennessee and Mississippi State over Illinois and Evansville. Again, that's not SEC level competition, but those are solid clubs. And I think you could say the same thing about Ole Miss over Morehead State and LSU over Xavier. So we'll jump into all of that here in depth as we move forward. But let's start with our game of the day. And I chose kind of co-games of the day here. Auburn 7, Austin Peay 6, and then Florida 12, St. Mary's 11 in 10 innings. They're co-games of the day, not just because they were both extremely dramatic and involved walk-off home runs, excuse me, but because they really felt like kind of the same game. In the Auburn game, you had Auburn jumping out front early, and you thought, okay, they're going to run away with this. It was 5-0 and early on, and they were all over Austin Peay's starting pitcher. Chase Alsop was cruising, but then Austin Peay came back and suddenly was fighting back in a way that you didn't necessarily expect, and they took a lead late, and then ultimately Auburn comes back with a Christian Hall home run in the 8th to tie the game, and then a home run from Mason Mainers in the 9th to walk it off. Florida against St. Mary's, it was kind of the same deal. I mean, it was a little more back and forth, and Florida led for most of the game. But, Florida scored runs early on St. Mary's against their starter, who had great numbers coming into the game. And you thought, okay, Florida's got this. They're going to run away with this thing. And then St. Mary's punched back late and actually took a lead in the 10th inning. And it took a Colby Shelton 3-run home run to win that game. And a couple of bigger picture thoughts there. One is that Cade Fisher wasn't great again as Florida's Friday starter. And they're in a tough spot, Florida is, with that, because they have a lot of options. Yes. I mean, the talent on that pitching staff is great. However, those options are kind of complicated, because typically in this situation, what a team will do is, okay, move, the Saturday guy up a day, and then let's roll from there. Well, the Saturday guy is Liam Peterson, and he's a freshman, and he's been a little inconsistent so far, but he's, got great stuff. He's got Friday starter stuff. I assume eventually he will be the Friday starter at Florida at some point. But do you really want a freshman going into SEC play as your Friday starter? Like, that's a question mark. And their Sunday guy is Jack Caglione, and he has Friday starter stuff too, and was great last weekend. But the complicating factor is his two-way status. So, they've kind of determined Sunday is the best day for him because of his recovery. So if you put him on Friday, he pitches on Friday, he's kind of gassed for the next couple of days. You put him on Sunday, though, it's an opportunity for him to, hit a couple of days, and then Sunday he pitches and he's a little bit gassed, but that's okay because it's the last game of the weekend. So moving him to Friday is kind of a non-starter. So that's kind of what complicates this for Florida. I'll be interested to see. I think they're going to stick with Cade Fisher a little while longer. Let him get into SEC play and see how it goes, because ultimately Florida hasn't looked as sharp as we expected them to be, but they're still mostly winning games. So, it's hard to nitpick too much here. So I think they'll continue to give him opportunities in that role, but man, they're going to need him to be better. And then quickly on the Auburn side, Chase Alsop, overall, his outing is probably better than his stats look, but this kind of is who Chase Alsop is, for better or worse. And you just wonder if this is kind of what he's going to be. I mean, through 2 innings, he looked great, elevated fastball, lots of swing and miss there, was doing just enough with the secondary stuff. But then he kind of just hits a little bit of a wall, 3rd, 4th inning, Austin Peay starts to put good at-bats together. They score on him. They just look really comfortable. So he's really good right up until he's not. Now they end up getting some length out of him and getting him into the middle innings. So that's why I say it was a better start than the numbers are going to suggest. But again, much like with Florida, is he the Friday guy you want to go into? SEC play with, and I think ideally that answer is yes, because you like the stuff, you like his experience. He checks a lot of boxes. So we'll just kind of have to see if he can be more efficient moving forward. All right, let's move on here. Before we move on to something else, a couple shout outs for comments here on Facebook. There's Jeremy Scott coming in with his Roll Tide as usual on Facebook, but then he mentions that Alabama didn't get to play yesterday, and Mother Nature does, yes, Jeremy, remain undefeated. That's how that goes. So I'm going to try to get some baseball in today in what's a rough weather weekend, although you'd rather this weekend be a rough weather weekend than next weekend when you're trying to kick off SEC play. I know Alabama knows that well, because last season I was in Gainesville for SEC opening weekend when Alabama played Florida, and they ended up having to do a doubleheader, which you don't love on the opening weekend of SEC play, trying to cram a doubleheader in there. Carl Dunn on YouTube says, looks like the LSU Tigers got a Friday night starter in Luke Coleman, and brother, you are right about that. I mean, I was on radio earlier this week, and I guess if you made me draft SEC starting pitchers, I probably still take Hagen Smith before I take Luke Coleman, but the number of pitchers I would take before Luke Coleman is getting smaller by the day. The dude looks great. And, we'll see in SEC play, of course, but Xavier's a good team. They've got some good bats. They were in a regional last year. They won 39 games. So that's not nothing. And he throws 6 innings of no-hit ball. And I guess I'll just kind of skip ahead. We'll go out of order here because he's my pitcher of the day, co-pitcher of the day. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, 6 innings of no hit ball, obviously no runs, 2 walks, 10 strikeouts. He's still yet to give up a run this year. I'm told that's pretty good. But he's co-pitcher of the day because Ryan Prager of A&M against Rhode Island, 7 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 run, no walks, 13 strikeouts. He has also yet to give up a run this season. So those 2 guys have really been excellent. You could hardly could be any better. And Prager's another guy, was a question mark coming into the year, just coming off of last year's injury. How good will he be? 2 years ago, he was pretty doggone good, but they're going to be asking more of him this year. And he's answered the bell so far. And so he's another guy who, when you talked about Friday starters coming into the season, I don't know where I would have ranked him, but certainly not as high as I would rank him now, because he's just been that good. So they're co-pitchers of the week. Some other shout outs on pitcher of the week: Carter Holton, 5 strong innings in their game against Illinois State. AJ Causey was again great for Tennessee in their win against Illinois. 6 innings pitched, 6 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts. Looks like Tennessee might have a Friday guy, and it's not the AJ they expected. Thought it might be AJ Russell. Instead, it looks like it's AJ Causey. The dude is nasty. I mean, it's low slot. It's, the fastball gets arm side run because of the slot. It's a high spin slider. It's like a 3,000 RPM slider. It's just nasty stuff. You wonder how he had a 5 ERA at Jacksonville State last year, because I can't imagine giving up 5 earned runs per 9 innings with the stuff as nasty as his. But, sometimes pitchers just, thrive in different environments. So good on him. Eli Jones of South Carolina in their win over Longwood, 6 shutout innings there for him. Nate Dome, a great outing against Evansville. He's been everything they could have asked for in a Friday guy at State. 6 1/3, 2 runs there, 10 strikeouts. So a good week for starting pitching around the league. I have a feeling that'll change next weekend, though. We get into SEC play, suddenly there won't be quite so many pristine pitching lines. Before we get to player of the day, I will interject with another another question here from the chat. On YouTube, Armstrong Grappling, who gave us the great question last week of, would you rather be punched in the face by Jared Jones once or Stephen Milam 5 times? He gives us another good one today. Joe, whose hairstyle would you rather have? The Wake Forest bleach blonde crew cut, Arkansas shortstop Vahiva Aloy, or Tommy Tanks? I'm going to be honest, I'm not familiar with Aloy's haircut. I guess I just haven't watched enough Arkansas so far this year. I'll have to look out for that today, but I have a feeling I would be choosing Tommy Tanks regardless, because as a bald man, I'm just jealous at his ability to have just those flowing locks. It gives you so much. You can do so much with it. He's got so many options when he cuts it, but right now he's just letting that thing flow, and I am super duper jealous. I'm not going the bleach blonde crew cut because, fun fact about Joe, although it was not bleach blonde or blonde of any kind, up until sophomore year of high school, I was a crew cut guy. I had a crew cut in middle school, high school, up until sophomore year when I grew my hair out, actually. And believe it or not, I had long hair at that time. But so I've done the crew cut. I feel like that's a little been there, done that. So I'm going to go with Tommy Tanks, although I got a response from Armstrong. Wait until you see Aloy. It's really something. I can't wait now. Suddenly I'm extremely excited to watch Arkansas, to see what kind of hair I'm working with Vahiva Aloy. So good stuff there. Armstrong, appreciate you as always, bringing those kinds of questions to the fold. Okay, let's talk player of the day. We've got some options here. Let's run through them. Teammates at Georgia, Charlie Condon and Dylan Goldstein. Condon 2 for 2, 2 home runs. I mean, what else can you say about this dude? Incredible hitter, just an incredible hitter, especially when you consider how much teams are kind of probably dancing around him. I've not seen every at bat of his, so but it seems like you have to be careful with him. So the idea that he's still hitting home runs at this rate is incredible. But Dylan Goldstein, his teammate, kind of outdid him. 3 for 3, a double, 2 home runs, 6 runs batted in. So combined, they go 5 for 5 with 4 home runs and a double. That's pretty good there for Georgia. Trevor Austin in a losing effort for Missouri, 3 for 5 with a double, a home run, and 3 runs batted in. Troylan Neve for Vanderbilt, filling up the box score, 3 for 4, double, triple, home run, 6 RBI. He would have had a chance at the cycle, but he got removed late in the game for a defensive replacement, so didn't get that opportunity there. Ethan Leger, who's been quietly just about as important as anybody, maybe outside of Jackson Ross in that Ole Miss lineup. He went 3 for 4 with a home run and 3 runs batted in. Dylan Brewer stays hot. the Clemson to South Carolina transfer from a couple of years ago, hitting about 500 this season so far, 3 for 4 with a double, 2 home runs, 3 runs batted in. And then Colby Shelton with that walk-off home run, 3 for 6, 2 home runs, 5 runs batted in. Florida just flatly doesn't win that game without Colby Shelton with that walk-off home run. But the player of the day was actually Dakota Jordan from Mississippi State. And for a couple of reasons. One is his line was great, 4 for 4 with a double, a home run, and 4 runs batted in. But that game was a microcosm of what he's been for Mississippi State's lineup all season. So Mississippi State has 8 home runs as a team, 7 home runs. But regardless, I'm going to pull it up just so I can fact check myself. But like, he just has such a large percentage of the team's home runs. Yeah, they have 8 home runs as a team, and he has 6 of them. So like that's how much he's meant. He's also leads the team in batting average, and the second place hitter, Amani Larry, who has a nice batting average, he's hitting 333, is 63 points behind Dakota Jordan in batting average. So Dakota Jordan has just made this offense go, and everything is kind of revolving around Dakota Jordan right now, which is great in one way because it means he's going really well. But on the other hand, you'd like more to be happening around him in Mississippi State's lineup. And it's why at this point, with the way the starting pitching has been on the weekends, I'm not so sure I'm not more worried about their lineup right now than I am their pitching, because we saw in the midweek, they threw 8 great innings out of the bullpen. You love that. The weekend rotation has been great for the most part. But the lineup outside of Dakota Jordan has just been kind of stuck in neutral. So the idea that, he drove in 4 runs in a game when Mississippi State scored 5 total is just so fitting for what he's been for that lineup. And he wins player of the game, a player of the day honors for Weekend Waypoints for that effort. Let's look at the game of the day going into Saturday. I'm going to say St. Mary's at Florida is the game of the day here for a couple reasons. One is, is St. Mary's going to come with the same energy they came with on Friday? Are they going to give Florida a run again? Or is this the kind of thing we see from time to time where a less talented team, plays really well in game one, best on best, and then Saturday, Sunday, the depth just isn't as good and things run away from them. So what is it going to be? And then on Florida's side, can Liam Peterson steady the ship? Can he get them back on track? And what does he look like? And can he be a guy who, if Cade Fisher comes out of the rotation or just needs to be moved back in the rotation, can he be that guy? Can he be the Friday guy eventually? That's kind of what I'm watching for there. And also just for Florida to be a little bit sharper. Again, they're mostly winning games, so it's hard to get too hung up on it, but they just haven't looked like the Florida team that I anticipated them being. They just kind of feels like they're sleepwalking a little bit. And again, the wins are there, so that's something. But I'll just look for them to be a little more dominant, a little sharper. Armstrong in the chat on YouTube, is Dome okay? He left shaking his hand. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Certainly, just you have a concern. I paused there because I was trying to remember the circumstances, but last year Dome missed some time with injury, and when he came back, he wasn't totally the same guy. So you'd think it necessarily wouldn't be a carryover injury just because he's been so great to start this season. So certainly something I will follow up on. Follow state beat writers locally. Robbie Falk, who was on our podcast Highway to Hoover last week. Steve Robertson obviously is covering the baseball team a lot. Brian Haydad. So a lot of good media members down there in Starkville covering the baseball team. So, I too, much like you, will be following up with them to see what the deal is with Nate Dome. That's good information. Because I was not watching that game when he came out, I was not aware of him leaving that game shaking his hand. You hope for state's sake. They've been so snake bitten on the mound. Landon Sims, and then last year with Dome himself and a million other injuries in the mound, they've been really snake bitten with mound injuries. But that's also college baseball these days. I mean, it seems like every team is snake bitten to some degree with injuries because we just get so many Tommy Johns and things of that nature. But so hoping that it's nothing, hoping that he's all right, and then he'll be able to start on Friday next weekend as State begins SEC play against LSU. And as Cameron Carter jumps in with a Go Tigers on YouTube, that is the opening weekend matchup for those two teams. Going to be a lot of fun. That's in Starkville, so should be an electric atmosphere there. That's going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints, your Saturday morning cup of Joe, presented by Plains Coffee Company. Again, Plains Coffee Company, easy checkout online, free shipping in the United States. They have coffee and tea. The beans don't get roasted until you order them, so they are as fresh as possible once they get on your doorstep. And you can use the code baseball at plainscoffee.com for 10% off your order. So between that 10% off code and the free shipping, you're really getting a heck of a deal on wonderful coffee beans that are fresh roasted every single time you order them. Order from a husband and wife small business in the SEC footprint. Again, plainscoffee.com, 10% off using the code baseball. I appreciate you guys watching. Enjoy this Saturday of baseball, hoping for better weather and getting more games in today. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow morning.